Live, Mike. Are you ready? Ah, we're already live. Crap! I pressed the button. I saw.
Oh my god.
Oh, this
Okay,
is gonna
I'm
be a.
live now too, by the
This
way.
is gonna
So
be a
hey,
great stream. I can already tell. My
All of
cameras
us.
are going nuts and the heads are zooming in and out. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the PokéStew. As you can see, we have a special guest here for our 10, 10th stream. So, everybody, welcome Armand. But before we get started, Mike's got to do our usual spiely thingy intro. So,
Steely thingy intro.
spiely thingy intro. So, kick it off there, Mike.
All right, here's the Steely thingy intro. So welcome again to the 10th episode of the PokéStew with Mike, Jen, and tonight Armand. Our disclaimer is that none of us, including Armand tonight, whichever way he is, work for the Pokemon Company International, the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, Nintendo, or any other affiliates thereof. So everything you're going to hear tonight is the strict opinion of the three of us, combined with our personal experiences throughout various sets of events to include the most recent European International Championships.
Hell
So,
yeah.
with that,
Without further introduction.
that's right. We are not going to implicate anything from the Pokemon Company. So again, everything that we're about to say may and will be used against us in the court of law. No, it's just our opinion.
Kyle
but-
just sent me this huge long thing, Kyle, and I see you in chat. And I'm gonna read that after the stream.
Dear God.
Crazy. I don't actually have Flat Jen. Flat Jen is still in London.
We're
in
in
a
London.
in a secret location with Dan Stir. I don't know where the small one is, but the big one was in Dan Stir's bed last night. So
Whoa. Is it plastic coated?
Ew.
Oh, yuck.
Anyway, so as you can see over there, there we go. We have our usual menu over there on the screen. And so we'll kick it off with our daily specials, as we like to call them, which is the news. Everybody knows what this weekend's news is, and that is the drop of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. God damn it, Mike. How do you have a fully evolved Decidueye already? I haven't even started playing the game. Anyway.
That's a giant Togedemaru. It's the totem. No, that's Dedenne. Where is it?
That's Dedenne. That's
back,
not
come back, come back.
Togedemaru. Get out
Come
of
back.
here. You're awful
Come on.
at this.
Come on. Show the Darn it. Everything but there it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Come on. Where is it?
There it is.
Come on.
It was there. All right, anyway.
It's
We're getting distracted.
Togedemaru. There it is. It's a giant Togedemaru, but anyways.
That's huge.
Besides
Anyway.
the point. Sorry.
So anyone who is anyone knows that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon dropped on Friday, the first day of the European International Championship. So if you were playing and or judging, well, I wouldn't say and or, if you were playing or judging this past weekend in Europe and London, you probably didn't get to play on Friday unless you were really dedicated and had maybe 2 DSs. So that, the game dropped over the weekend. So a lot of the UBs got their names now. I am a big fan of what is it? What's the Stack-a-Taka? I think it's called Stack-a-Taka.
UB Assembly?
Yeah. Assembly is called Stack-a-Taka. So I'm just like,
No,
I can't even.
Wait a minute. That's the actual in-game name?
Is it
Yes, it's the in-game name. I was reading about them today before I actually start playing.
Did you see the little purple guy? His name is Poiple.
Poiple?
Poiple.
Oh boy.
And he's purple. He's Poiple.
So anyway, so that game is dropped this past weekend. I know a lot of people have been streaming it and are already finished playing, and you guys are like way ahead of us, and you guys are already, you've been playing Battle Spot Doubles, as we call it. You guys have been playing VGC 18, and you're all up in that, the next format. So, let us know how it's going. Let us know what you're enjoying playing right now. I'm gonna be all over Stack-a-Taka because that is so cool.
I swear to God, every time I hear that, I am going to laugh. It's uncontrollable. It's a reflex. Stack-a-Taka.
Stack-a-Taka, I love it.
Stack-a-Taka. I think of a can of Pringles and I hear Stack-a-Taka.
Oh my God, are you gonna name it Pringle?
I don't know. I'm not that good. I may never catch a stack-a-tacka. Catch a stack-a-tacka. Catch a stack-a-tacka. Catch a stack-a-tacka.
Armand, aren't you glad you came on tonight? Like,
So glad.
this is gonna be some crazy stream that we got going on here. Anyway, so the game is out. Everybody's working their way through it.
Except for you.
Except for me, because I haven't even opened the dang box yet.
I only get to play in a week.
You'll get to play. You haven't gotten it, right? It hasn't been released in South Africa?
No, it has, but I pre-ordered it months ago, and then I heard it was going to come to London, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to cancel my pre-order and buy one here. So it's at home waiting for me to...
so you're in London for the next week?
I'm in London until Sunday.
Oh, fantastic! That sounds like a good time.
Jen.
Yeah. Oh God.
How much wood could a stack-a-tacka stack if a stack-a-tacka could stack wood?
You're fired. So as you guys can see, we're having a really silly stream tonight. Enjoying stack-a-tacka. We really should do a proper intro for Armand. So, like we were talking about, European International Championships was this past weekend. Mike and I were not there. That's probably why we're all kinds of silly right now, because we were really sad this past weekend. If you were following the tweeters, you may have seen a cardboard version of myself floating around London. Kyle and Dan and Susie and a whole bunch of people took some selfies with what we were calling Flat Jen. So she was floating around European International Championships, which was really nice to see. But over in our lower, on your screen, I think it should be your lower right-hand corner, is our head judge for video game, Armand. Armand is from South Africa, and so, Armand, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into Pokemon and how long you've been doing the judge thing.
Oh, that's a
lot of questions.
Do you want the long or the short answer?
I mean...
Medium.
Medium, yeah. Let's go middle of the road here. Mind the gap.
I like that. Well, I've always been a Pokemon fan. Started playing with Pokemon Yellow back in the day. Didn't even know there was an actual competitive scene to it. And then 2013, friends through a friend told me about a Pokemon League, and I was, what sorcery is this? So I went to the league, and I got very into TCG. Mm-hmm. My first event was a Boundaries Cross League Challenge.
Nice.
I lost. I was so bad. I lost. I couldn't believe. But it was amazing, and got into the TCG, and I think 2014, 2015, South Africa was allowed into organized play for video game, but we didn't have organizers. So I thought, okay, well, I've done the professor exam because I'm an overachiever, so let's do this, and that was pretty much the end of it. Started judging.
Well, the start of it, I would say.
The end of my social life, if we're like that.
It's a rebirth of a new social life.
What social life?
It is my social life. So I started judging, and we didn't have that many judges in the area, so I ended up head judging many events, even though I think I was underqualified, but I ended up head judging. Then last year, through a series of events, I happened to get an invitation to go to Worlds, where I met you guys. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's just been fantastic all the way through. I mean, I'm now part of this big family, the support structure, and GPC, I thought I was good enough to head judge London, so I'm in London.
Still.
Everyone else is left, I think, except Dan. Dan's still floating around with Flat Jen.
Dan is still around. He's taking his time. Thanks,
well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So, so you get the invite to the European International Championships. Yes. When did we get those? I think sometime at the end of August or beginning of September. I don't remember when that.
It was just before Worlds actually took place.
Yeah.
It's just before Worlds took place.
So you get this email. I mean, how do you react? You know, like
Well, I got the email and it was quite late at night. And first thing I did was squeal like a little girl, um, as you do. And then the panic sets in.
Oh no! Immediately, the panic
Immediately,
sets
the
in.
panic sets in. And then you respond before your panic gets the better of you. To say, okay, I will do this, and I will sort out the logistics afterwards. So, and then I messaged you about it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, what else can I say? You freak out and you're excited. You start counting the days.
Right, as you do.
Well, that kind of falls right into line with one of the questions that Wilson asked us
Yes.
on Facebook is how do you deal with a little certain level of anxiety? And I suppose it's kind of a two-part question, right? One is the anxiety, the anticipation, the freaking outedness as you lead up to the event, and then once you're there, what was your experience once you got there, and how did it feel, and I'm sure even the most seasoned judges, once that as soon as the doors open for that first time, for that first moment, between the doors opening and the person up on stage saying round one, you may begin. That's kind of the longest part of your entire life. So how did you feel leading up to the event, and then all the way up to round one?
Well, up to the event itself, you psych yourself out. Well, I psych myself out. I mean, you're a judge. You've been chosen to fulfill this role. You guys know this. You know your stuff. You know what you have to do. It's the same as your own mid-season, except it's just more people and other people involved. But it's no different. So I psych myself out a lot. But at the event, when they said round one, and I was like, but I know this. I've been through this. The anxiety went away entirely. And when you put your lab coat on, I told this to many of the judges, when you put your lab coat on, you're not the Armand you are back home. You're not the Armand with insecurities. You're Armand judge that knows his stuff. And you know what you have to do, and you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Mike, how do you handle it?
How do I handle it?
Sweets.
I mean, from this past summer, with going through Nats and Worlds together, and you coming up as lead for Worlds, I remember the both of us were anxious as all get out for these kinds of things. What did you do leading up to Worlds when you were knowing you were going to be tech lead?
So if you ask anyone in my family, especially my wife, she will call me an emotional cripple.
And she does on many occasions.
My son is shaking his head violently over here in wild agreement. But as an emotional cripple, I'm not sure I would classify some of my feelings necessarily as anxiety. Kind of like Armand said, it's you get the call, you get the tag, and it's for a reason, right? And you've demonstrated something of some kind of caliber to somebody that makes some kind of a decision, right? A lot of somebodies and some things, but so you take kind of pride in that, and then you push forward. The biggest thing leading up to the event, from my perspective, was, okay, they want me to do this, and let me just try to ask as many questions as I can prior to the event, so that when I get there, I have as much information, right? And I don't like showing up to something and not knowing some of the basic things, right? And once you are there, though, however, there are going to be moments where you just don't know, right? And so that's the second part, is even though you may not know everything, is taking things in stride, rolling with the punches, being flexible, and trying to progress through that. And then once you're there, you start the ball rolling. It's kind of that old adage. I've heard it, with two different animals. How does somebody eat a whale, or how does somebody eat an elephant? Right, one bite at a time. So one bite at a time. So if you look at the size of the elephant or the whale, you could freak out and you say, this is never going to be consumed, right? So bite-sized chunks. Take it one step at a time. But with that, you're not ignoring bites 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 while you're taking bite 2. You need to be conscious of those things coming and kind of prepare yourself as events are unfolding. But at the same time, don't overwhelm yourself with all the things that have to happen. Plan accordingly, roll with the punches, and just take it one step at a time. That's kind of my approach of how I tackle larger events.
So these guys are cool customers over here. I'm a big ball of anxiety, and I kind of
What?
freak out. Shut up, Mike. Mike deals with my panicked messages all the time. While it's an honor to get that email every time, even if it's, floor judge, down onto they want you to clean up the garbage, whatever it is that they ask you to do, it's a humongous honor that they've chosen you and they've recognized your hard work. But it's also, I feel, and I know I'm sure that there's those of you out there that feel the same way, that it's also kind of a daunting task to make sure that you're still up to that level or that you don't let them down. You want to make sure that you perform flawlessly, at the task that they've given you. And I subscribe to the philosophy that you want to go into a situation and kind of be a neutral party. And what I mean by that is you never want to go into a situation and be a negative. And if you go into a situation and try and be a positive, that's okay, great. But you could go into a situation you're unfamiliar with and try so hard to be a positive and end up being a detriment to your team. So I always try and go in and be as neutral as possible so that I can learn as much as I can and kind of fit in with my team until I've, kind of made that bond and gotten to know my team and learned, where I can contribute in a positive way while still trying to maintain that kind of neutral aspect of not being a negative, and like I mentioned, really important to kind of work with that team. You come in and, you're maybe used to working locally by yourself and you're running the show, you're the TO, you're running Tom, you're judging, you're running the stream. It's, one man band over here. But when you come into these larger events, you're working with a team of 10, 20 plus people. So now it's learning that team dynamic and learning how you can fit in with all of these other personalities. And especially when you're in a head judge role like Armand was this past weekend, it's kind of learning how to support that team.
Yeah.
Where you may not have had to, do that before.
Yeah.
Even if you've worked on a larger team, you may not have had to be in that role before.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of pile onto that one first for a second, and a little bit of what Armand was talking about too, where it's really like a mid-season, just bigger, right? But because it's bigger, like Jen was just saying, you can't run Tom and post pairings and cut papers and answer judge questions and move people to the charging station. So in some ways, you really have to, like you said, rely on that team and be able to delegate. And in some ways, Jen, you can agree or disagree, and same Armand too, is I'll throw this out there. In some ways, being a head judge or lead, in some ways, is almost one of the roles that has the least actual Pokemon involvement. And in many ways, it's more of a, can I organize a bunch of people to accomplish a task?
Yep.
That's very accurate.
Yeah, Armand, how did that affect you guys this weekend? Going in, being a head judge, being on, the admin side of it. How did that pan out for you this weekend?
Well, I was on the admin side, but the event is European events are different to the US-based events where TPCI contracts out the actual running of the event. So I had no involvement with Tom. I had no involvement with announcements. None of that. I didn't have to. The most I had to deal with the Hive was putting up pairings and submitting to match slips, basically. So that aside, there wasn't really that much admin left. The only thing I had to do was coordinate the judges, essentially. Um, and everyone on every judge that was part of my team, they were there on merit. They deserved to be there. They were amazing, and they worked cohesively together. So, like as I mentioned just before the stream, my job was not that hard. They followed instruction, and everything flew. Everything flowed nicely. Every round we had dedicated judges that would grab the pairings and put them up. We would have all the judges get the players to the seats. The rounds went off seamlessly except for one round, and I don't know what else I can add to that, but it was an entire team. My job was the simplest one. I just had to make sure that they were doing their jobs, and they were.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the rounds going off seamlessly, I watched from home, and I know Mike did as well, and I was pretty impressed with the lack of downtime on the stream. And so kudos to the ESL team and the casters and the crew that ran the stream this weekend. And so I was wondering, because
and all the
over here,
stopwatches on stream too.
Oh God, the stopwatches on stream. Yes, thank you very much. Preach. The stopwatches on stream. Thank you very much. Anyway, so I was wondering, because we're, on the U.S. side, like you said, things are different over in Europe. On the U.S. side, we're very much of the opinion that the tournament comes first. And so the stream can't hold up the tournament, which has happened in the past and caused some issues, especially with the players on site wondering why is my round taking 30 minutes to turn over? So how did that interaction work this weekend with you guys and the ESL team and tournament center and things like that?
It was for the most part seamless. They would come up, they would choose two tables, and they would go on to stream. And the round did take precedence. But what they did do is they would delay the second match, which I didn't know until it was too late. So that if the first match ended quickly, that they had a second match to go to in terms of broadcasting, which in general would be fine.
Right.
But there was one round, and I'm not sure if you saw the picture that Nikki sent out, where everything that went wrong or could go wrong did go wrong. So it was delayed. Then they had technical difficulties connecting, so that took time.
Okay.
Then they went to time, and all in all, that one round was delayed by 35 minutes.
Yeah, Nikki's in chat, and she's saying that the one round was held up by 36 minutes.
But there is a picture of me next to the clock of 36 minutes. Nikki sent me off to say, go take a breath before you kill someone. And
please, no mass murder at the tournament.
No. I was just upset that if it's a 10-minute delay, I can deal with that.
Yeah.
But we had spent almost an additional rounds worth of time waiting for the stream to conclude, and it was the last match, so you couldn't continue with the next round because you had to have that match slip for pairings.
Right.
So that was frustrating, but it ended well. We had a discussion with the organizers, not the organizers, but the people in charge of stream at that moment, and they promised that they would not delay the second match again, so that we wouldn't have to have the same situation happen again. And except for that one incident, it was seamless. We had dedicated judges for stream that they chose up front.
Yep.
So at no point did I have to sacrifice anybody or think who would be the best person for stream. They had dedicated stream judges, and those three coordinated brilliantly. When they were on, they were on. When they were off, they would actually report back, but I would typically send them away for a break. Nikki can tell you about the break things as well. It was quite funny. But it felt so seamless. I mean, like I said, the teams did what they had to do. We gave them a brief in the beginning, and they followed the brief.
So, go ahead.
No, so I was actually going to ask, I'm just thinking about our inaugural European International Championship last year, and how we had a brand new game that had just come out and all of the challenges, and The
You had
trials
it
and
right.
tribulations that we were put through and the nightmares that I had following. And I know going in, I talked to Thomas, who was
Yes.
your tech lead, quite extensively, and so did Mike. Because we've both been tech lead before, so he was kind of asking us a bunch of questions. But so tell us a little bit about the kind of technical concerns that you had going into the event, and what, if any, of those kind of came to fruition. I mean, if at all.
Well, this is once again part of the seamless thing. Soma was brilliant. He came in very
He
prepared.
is. He is.
He is prepared. He's very eager as well. So what Toma did is he requested very early on to have an assistant, which
Yeah,
is
we
also
spoke about this.
we spoke about this, and
Yep.
initially it was a very strange concept, but we went with it because someone knows what he's doing.
Yes.
And it ended up being a brilliant idea. I mean, disconnection issues, we didn't have any major disconnection issues. I think someone had to resolve one. And there was basically, in terms of disconnections, we needed someone once. To have Pokemon removed in terms of team sheets not being correct, I think we had 4 in total. And other than that, hack checks were passed properly, teams were checked properly. They were like, you expect things to happen. You expect to have a whole table worth of disconnections in your nightmares, but none of that happened. Compared to last year, I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
I had it so easy in comparison to last year. Everything just worked. And but with Summer choosing an assistant, he trained Soren. You all know Soren
Oh
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Him and Soren, they made a fantastic team. Where, I mean, they had to check the juniors and seniors as well. At some stage, they had to help with the side events to check because there was a request for it. And between the two of them, it just happened. I mean, I had Thomas check the entire day 2 Swiss, not just the percentage, but the entire day 2 Swiss, in terms of obviously hack checks, but also manually check against a move list. We had a list we got from TPCI that had all the Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon move tutor moves.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
we checked every single person in day 2 against all of that. And I mean, those are big tasks and not simple. And someone pulled it off. I don't think many people could have pulled it off, but he's very enthusiastic. And
He certainly is.
he is, and Soren as well. And between the two of them, like I said, technical issues, they were so few. Like I said, I think he had to resolve one disconnection.
That's good.
Excellent.
That's good to hear. Did you have any issues with players losing power or having to move? Because I saw the layout. I think it was Thursday night or Friday morning. I saw the layout of the hall. I noticed that it was a smaller hall, but then I noticed that on the map there was a whole charging station section over on the side, which I don't think I've ever seen a map. Well, I don't think I've ever seen a booklet like that before come out, so that was fantastic. So whoever did that, I suspect Becca did that. It was absolutely beautiful.
Florida Regionals had a similar booklet.
Right, Becca.
Not as nice, but
Becca's this one for this past weekend. So if you got one, you have like a really nice souvenir, I think. But the booklet was great, and it had the charging station section. So tell us a little bit about, obviously it's in the rules now, moving the matches. Was there any issues there?
Nothing major. We had an odd player that didn't like being moved because obviously they would win if the opponent's console died. But the rule basically was, and this was Baker that addressed this, they said, you as a judge, you are moving the match. So if the opponent doesn't want to come, they have the 5 minutes, game lost, another 5 minutes, another game lost. Basically that. So you as a judge would then move the match. Something we did do is we had little slips where if a match was moved, we would say that this match has moved to the charging stations. Now it sounds simple, but when you're looking for that odd match slip and the players under the table, you know where they are. And it's such a simple solution, but it made a world of difference.
We
Excellent.
did
Yeah.
we did move slips before, right, Mike? Where did we do those?
Um,
Oh, you know what we've done them for? I don't think we've done them for move to charge station. We did them for stream. We had
well,
And we
slips
also
that
did.
said this match
we
was
did
moved to
move.
the stream.
We did move to charge station slips as well, but we've never really. It's always been like a scrap piece of paper that's like ripped in
Yeah.
half, and the more I see the use of them, and Armand talking about how well they worked, I'm almost of the mindset, and maybe since Miss Nikki's on your chat there, maybe for the San Jose, you guys have some nice like 3x5 type ones that are like kind of rigid laminated kind of things that you can set down on the table, and then you can shove into your pocket or onto your clipboard, right?
Clipboard.
Yeah.
Clipboard.
So
That would
that
be a
every
good thing.
every judge has a couple of them. So if we end up
Yeah.
moving to the charge station, flop that down there and then collect them back up at the end of the round.
Yeah, that would be
I
a
think
good
that'd
thing.
be maybe make
Absolutely.
them nice bright orange or something that just stands out, saying, "Hey, charge station," or stream, or you could have different colored ones for one or the other. So
So
yeah.
I think a lot of people have been asking, and it just did come up in chat, and we spoke about this before we went live. A lot of people are wondering how you guys decided or what guidance was given from TPCI on how to apply the new
2.2.
section 2.2 exactly, and kind of 2.3 as well, because those are
2.3
kind of like they kind of go together. So I know you posted a little bit on, I can't remember if it was the judge group, the VGC judge
Probably
group,
both.
or yeah, so you
Yeah.
kind of posted about it, but not everybody saw it, and definitely nobody outside of those groups saw it. I'm sure that it kind of
Okay.
trickled down. But tell us a little bit about how that interaction went and what your discussion was with, because I know you said you talked to Nikki and Thomas and Martina. So tell us about that, and then what direction, if any, you got from TPCI on 2.2.
Okay, so when 2.2 became a thing, I immediately emailed Becca, hoping for a response because obviously this event would be affected by it.
Absolutely.
But as you can imagine, the questions I was asking, they couldn't necessarily answer in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised that I haven't received a response. I don't expect one.
Mm-hmm.
But so beforehand, it was myself, Toma, Nikki, Martina. I think Stefan was involved as well, where we had a short discussion just on how would we approach it. How are we going to approach it for this event?
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, CPCI hadn't really given any guidance besides the new rules document. And our discussion was that we would go on this soft stance, pretty much like you discussed in a previous broadcast, where we would not give a person automatic disqualification for having a modded device, but should that device become a problem in terms of something else, like repeated disconnections, maybe, then you could relook at the rule and maybe then apply it.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in thinking that. Then on day one in the Leeds meeting, it was discussed and actually said outright that they will not allow any modded devices. But they were talking specifically about hardware mods. I'll get back to the hardware mods thing. They will not allow any devices at the event for participation, but they would allow players to register using that device because the registration actually links to your game cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
if you had a cartridge version of the game, we would allow you to register, but that person had to obtain a different console by the next day for the player meeting. And also those people that had these modded devices, their details were taken down and they were checked in the players meeting the next day. And so at that point, I immediately tweeted out that do not bring your capture card devices. It got some traction, and luckily, only a sum total of 2 people brought to capture card devices to registration.
Mm-hmm.
And then come next day, they didn't have them anymore. But CPCI is they're very adamant that they will not allow capture card devices by players, but they don't want the grassroots level streams to die off. So
Right.
so that is why, and this was said to me repeatedly in a very short time frame, that is very specifically worded in such a manner that a player can be put on a capture card device without suffering penalty or
Right.
threat of penalty. So we can, as organizers, we can use capture card devices. We can make players play on them without them being penalized.
Right.
Fortunately for me, back home, I'm the only one with a capture card device, so my players aren't affected. You guys aren't that lucky.
Right. Right. Unfortunately, a lot of our players have those modded devices, and I know that for a while now we've kind of been telling them to keep all of their modded devices, and not just the hardware mods but the software mods too,
Yes.
to keep them all home and just not bring them to tournaments at all.
Yeah.
And
Not to.
it's kind of difficult if, say you're a streamer and you're doing, say, like a, road to regionals kind of stream, or, you want to record your matches after each round. Not record them, but kind of like, transfer them over to your laptop. The fact that you can't bring that hardware modded DS anymore is kind of, detrimental to your, your stream and things like that. And we get that, we understand, but we kind of have to go along with the rules of the road here.
But basically, on that, as you just mentioned, for people specifically who record their matches for broadcast purposes, because the game is tethered to the cartridge, they can still remove the cartridge, put it into their modded device, do the recording bit.
Yep. There was my point. So Armand's got it.
Are the battle videos saved to SD or to the cartridge?
It is, and the
cartridge?
battle videos in general are saved to the memory card, but in tethered events, if I'm correct,
Yeah.
In the tethered events and
my
all
son's
of
over
our
here.
all of our
cartridge.
tethered events
It's to the cartridge.
should be to the cartridge. Yeah.
So kind of pulling on that thread a little bit too. Let's bring the event level back down for a second. Let's not pretend it's the largest tournament that we have of all seasons. With the international championships. Let's talk mid seasons and PCs at down at my local game shop or my local college where I do most of my mid seasons. Now TPCI is drawn a pretty hard line in the sand, as evidenced by this past weekend. Now, if I have a person that's showing up at my midseason or my Premier Challenge, and the only device they have with them, and it's 9:00 in the morning, the day of my event, is a loopy capture card, am I going to turn them away because they don't have a backup DS or we can't find them a backup one? As an organizer, I'm going to apply the part of the rule that says may incur penalties, and I'm going to allow that player to play, and that's as an organizer, that's my stance, to allow them to play. But then, like Armand was pointing out earlier, that softer stance, right? So if that device does pose a problem later in my event, I still have that ability to apply a penalty later on. I'm just not going to, proactively prevent them from participating. That's a bunch of P's.
Nice. Nice alliteration.
Taka. Prevent them from participating in my events. Now, but what I will share with that player, though, even though, hey, come play my event, that's fine. Okay, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. It's okay. I'll give them a hug if they need a hug. But at the same time, I will tell them and I will warn them and I will cite the EUIC as a reference point saying, look, you go to a regional where TPCI is or higher, like NAIC or Australia or Brazil or London next year, odds are they're not going to allow you to play. Okay, so you come play my event. As long as you don't have any issues, we're going to be okay. But between now and the next big event, you might want to find a backup or a friend with a backup you can borrow. Okay. And then during the promotion of the events, like Jen was saying, is strongly encouraging your players that are going to be showing up to not bring a modded device. I mean, that's by far the easiest approach, is if the players adopt the harder line stance and bite the bullet, bring a non-modded device. And I probably the vast majority of players don't have that. I mean, like you said, the EUIC. How many total players did you have, Armand?
We had just over 400 masters.
So it's about 400 masters, and you had two
modded devices.
Two modded devices, right? So
yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, this is not a huge thing. So, the education, the information dissemination, um, and then the sharing of that stance is critical between organizers, players, the community as a large. But in some ways, I kind of appreciate the way the wording was created for 2.2, that gives the tournament organizer the flexibility to, in part of the penalty guidelines, to downplay some of that, to adapt to our own circumstances as we push forward. But again, it has to be spread amongst the players in the community, that especially for these high level events, it's not going to fly, right? You might come to Mike's. You come to Mike's event and you have a loopy card. It's probably not going to be a big deal. But you show up at the Fort Wayne Regionals or San Jose, tough luck, buddy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that if organizers and judges are going to take the hard stance on it, really it's the organizer. Even though it's in the rules, I think in your, in your documents or in your, your event listing on Pokemon.com, and if you make a Facebook page, if you're going to take that hard stance on it, you definitely should put that in your notes or in your information. Like, here's my PC, here's my mid-season. By the way, don't bring your modded devices according to this ruling. I will not allow you to play. Because I think the players will appreciate at least that kind of transparency. And, they may not like the fact that you're not going to allow them to use it, but they'll at least appreciate the kind of heads up on it, so that they're not showing up and it's like, well, you know what, it's in the rules document, I can do it, and I'm not going to allow you. Now that's kind of like, well, they've shown up, they've driven however long. A lot of them are driving 3, 4, and 5 hours to get these mid-seasons, and it's kind of, that's not really going to get you a great reputation in, in the community. So...
right there below the line that says, in your tournament details, it says, deck lists are required, download them at this location. The very next line should be, if you're going to apply this rule, no modded devices will be allowed at this tournament.
Yep. Okay. And I think you meant team lists, Mike. Deck list is TCG.
Whatever. Team list, deck list. Stacka-tacka. And right below that line where you say you're not going to allow modded devices should be another line that says, again, I'm not going to allow modded devices. Because it's been my personal experiences even if you put information in the event details, the minute you post something on Facebook, you're going to get an instant message saying, what time's the event? How much are you charging? And I want to quickly reply.
Is it best of 1 or best of 3?
Details. I don't know. God. That is the most stupid name ever.
I love
sorry.
it. Oh, that's it. I'm going to make a meme with that now.
Stacka-tacka. Stacka-tacka. What if a Rattata is on a Stacka-tacka?
Oh, God, no!
Hmm?
What have you done?
Stacka-tacka, Rattata. Rattata, Stacka-tacka.
Oh, what have you done? That's it. Get out. You're fine.
People are looking at this going, what the hell is going on?
Are these people serious?
Yeah, basically.
And, out of all the people that I think should be like crazy and loopy right now, it's probably Armand. It's what, 2 in the morning?
2:45.
2:45. Yeah, almost 3 in the morning. Okay, I'm loopy because I'm old and it's almost my bedtime. But dang, it's 3 in the morning.
I mean,
sorry,
pretty much. Armand is still in London. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Neither of Mike or I have traveled at all this weekend. Armand's traveled from South Africa up to the event. He worked the event. What is it, like 12 hours that you guys worked Friday and probably Thursday? I know Saturday was a little quicker and Sunday was quicker, but you guys worked, you guys were amazing this weekend. And here you are hanging in with us 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're the ones that are disasters.
Hey, so with Armand, with that, is being in South Africa normally 90% of your time, right? And then now in London, and a good chunk of the Pokemon community being in the continental United States, is all your Pokemon involvement kind of like being living in a real life Pokemon Moon or Ultra Moon where everything's done at night?
Not necessarily. Well, if I want to speak to you guys, yes. But luckily, we have enough people in our own community to do these things in daylight.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, historically,
Except-
most of the announcements have come out of the Seattle office. So
Yeah.
South Africa is how many hours ahead of London? What is it, like 2 hours ahead of London?
Currently 2 hours, yes.
Right. So that's 7 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time. So 10 hours ahead of Seattle. So you're talking like almost a half a day away from Seattle. So these announcements come out like, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, New York time, or 5 o'clock afternoon, Seattle time. And it's 5 a.m. for Armand. But I mean, lately, a lot of the announcements have been coming out of the London office,
London,
thankfully.
yeah.
So I wake up and have an email in my inbox at like 5 a.m., which is fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Armand gets to deal with a
That's-
lot of the European community as well. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's your moon, your Pokemon Sun version of your Pokemon experience, right?
I mean, it's like that meme that was going around a couple of months ago about Australia VGC being on Twitter and everything happening while they're sleeping. So, you know, it's pretty much the same concept.
Same concept.
I want to quickly, because I keep looking at my sweater over here and admiring my fancy little thing here. I want to shout out the Pokemon Company for again bringing these staff awesome hoodies back, and giving them out to the staff that were at the EUIC that hadn't already gotten one. So everyone that has already gotten one did not get another one, unfortunately. But everyone that worked the EUIC who had not gotten one, who didn't work Worlds, was gifted one of these fantastic things, which is awesome. Armand's got one now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, you know, congratulations to everyone who, you know, worked the EUIC. This is probably a lot of their first major events, and I know that they're going to cherish that hoodie. I pretty much wear it all the time.
It's so toasty.
Just don't wash it the way I did. I totally ruined it, and the black is kind of fading. So,
Boo.
yeah.
I'm gonna.
I actually want to go back because Daz actually asked a question earlier about the hardware modifications. He was wondering if there was a list given to you guys as to what hardware modifications you were supposed to look out for during the check-in process on Thursday.
There was no, there wasn't an actual written up list, but in our brief, we were basically told it has to be visible for you to basically catch it. Hardware mods, we specifically displayed or showed a loopy capture card with an added bottom, thicker bottom at the bottom.
Like this one.
That one.
There you go.
There it is.
It was basically we were looking out for that, and then for any device with a suspicious-looking hole. if I have to quote the person who briefed us, a suspicious-looking hole at the back. So if there was a hole that wasn't the charging port or for the cartridge for the older DSs, then it would count as a device.
Oh, there's another thing to meme. Can we get a recording of
Just
Kay
go.
saying suspicious hole?
It
That's
was
perfect.
Suspicious hole in the
It
back.
was
Yeah.
definitely Kay that said it. Suspicious
Oh my
looking
god.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's great.
If
And
it's
I
a normal
think you
looking hole,
mentioned
it's okay.
if it's a define normal looking hole, sir.
If it's not for the power, it is suspicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you also mentioned that the external battery packs, and I know that a lot of the older 3DS models like this one have an external battery pack option on them. And this one had one before I got it modded by Loopy. I think you also said that those were not allowed as well because that's an aftermarket thing. That's not like a Nintendo product, right?
So it's basically any physical alteration to the device itself.
Okay.
So it includes the battery pack, the capture card, anything obvious, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned earlier that the guidance was that anything obvious hardware wise, but also if you came to a game and saw something suspicious software wise.
This is getting on 2.3, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you came to the game and they had the homebrew menu open, well, now you're seeing it. It's there. You know that this is not allowed. Now you're allowed to take that, and do something about that. Am I right? That was the kind of guidance you received?
That is basically the way I understood it.
Okay.
But it was expressly also stated that you should not go through a player's console looking for mods, looking for these things.
Right.
I had some concerns in my communications with TPCI, and you guys all saw it in terms of legality.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically in the UK, it is illegal to go through someone's console looking for specific software. So that rule was never meant for software modification, and I think it just happens. It just happenstance that you can now catch things like an open homebrew menu, but in general, it's meant for hardware.
I think the interesting thing is that we've all seen those players at events, and I know, Mike, this has come up several times at ours, where we all have seen those players at events between rounds go off to an empty table and pull out their laptop, and yeah. So, again, if you have those kind of
They're just trying to breed a
modifications...
You can't breed Stack-Attacker.
Yeah, Mike.
They're trying.
They're trying to breed the Stack-Attacker. I think the idea is that leave it all at home. Like it's kind of like the we all know that you do it. Like it's really not a secret at this point, people. Like you're pulling out your laptop at a tournament. We're all going to assume that you're pulling up PK Hex or you're whatever it is, but just leave it all at home. Better safe than sorry. If you have these mods on your DS, don't bring it. Better not take that chance, and just come with a clean unit. And for the people out there that, well, for Aaron just mentioned. Oh my God, there's a cat. You have a cat.
It's almost like there's a cat.
It's not my cat. It's my host's cat.
Oh well.
She's called Tiny, and she's amazing.
She's
She
gorgeous.
doesn't like being held.
I love cats. She's gorgeous.
I don't know why.
Like...
Just for some reason, Armand, I was just, in my mind, I was like, oh, he's still in a hotel somewhere, and all of a sudden there's a random cat. I'm like, what?
I'm not in a hotel.
I just went off on a total tangent because Mike cannot get distracted by cats. Aaron is actually mentioning that he does his homework frequently at tournaments. We're aware of this. Like, we're not saying like you can't take your laptop out,
God,
especially if Caitlin's saying she uses it as a charger for her DS. We're not saying that you can't take your laptop out. We're just saying like don't do those things with your laptop. Stay off evil, bad, not good software programs.
Don't be obvious about it.
Yeah. Well, I won't even say don't be obvious about it, because that's kind of saying, well, you could do it, but kind of go off in a corner and be shady about it. Or maybe go outside where everybody's smoking in the back,
No. Okay. Sorry.
Just don't do it.
Listen, we know you do it. Leave it at home.
If you're watching YouTube, you're doing your homework, you're charging your DS, you're playing Showdown, those kinds of things, fine. Bring out your laptop, pull out some popcorn,
bring out your dead,
whatever it is. Bring out your dead, ding. Yeah.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, I'm old, okay. Those are all fine, absolutely fine. Don't fret over those things. But when okay, I'll bring it up. At Hartford, we had some issues, and next thing I know, I'm getting mad texts from people out on the floor saying, hey, there's a bunch of guys sitting around a table in the middle of the play area running PK Hex right in the play area. And it's like, don't do it, please.
Don't do it.
Can I just say, Hartford was my tournament. Don't do it at my tournaments.
Don't do it at anybody's tournament.
Well, don't do it at any tournaments, but don't do it at my tournament.
Well, don't do it at all.
Don't do it at any tournaments, but I'm watching you.
I'm watching you. Oh my God. Stucka-ducka.
So we have about 4 minutes left of the stream. I think we went live almost exactly
Oh,
on
wow.
9. We went live almost exactly on 9, and we're getting up to 10 o'clock. So let's
Yep.
keep the ball rolling here. I'm actually gonna move my little menu thing up. Not that we're finished by any means with the main course, but I just want to kind of move
Yeah.
things forward.
So right before we move into the dessert part, right? One of the things I want to circle back around to the beginning of EUIC, and if there's anything else that you guys wanted to talk about too, please interject. But before the event even started, and we talked a little bit about handling stress and anxiety leading up to the event before the round 1 start. Check-in. When check-ins started happening over there, there was a lot of stuff flying around the Twitterverse and Facebook world about player caps and people that traveled without.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So, I don't know all the stuff that happens. All you know is you hear one angry story, and then you hear somebody else's retort, and then somebody else's angry story, and before I toss it over to you, Armand, to kind of get some of the here's the real deal. This is my kind of public service announcement for players. If you bought plane tickets, the second that registration opens, buy a registration. It's that player caps are becoming an issue, and it really hasn't been an issue for a long time in the video game community. It's been more so in the TCG, but it really seems like we are hitting caps at some of these larger events, and if you want to be there, you've got to secure it. So don't delay. I know things happen, and I know that there are circumstances beyond people's control, and I understand that, right? So I'm not trying to say, hey, it's completely your fault. The other side of the coin, which I don't know anything about, again, go back to our disclaimer at the beginning of the show. If caps have changed in the middle of a registration process, then that is totally uncalled for too, and that should be addressed at by someone somewhere somehow. And if they announce a certain cap, they should be held to that, right? And or provide compensation for those that have suffered from a lowered cap. But with that said, especially for such a large event that players have to, a good chunk of them have to fly to, especially overseas. And I know this is me. If I would do one of two things, right? If I wouldn't buy my plane tickets until I had my registration, or if I bought plane tickets because they were cheap in anticipation of going, as soon as registration opened, I would make sure I get a red spot in my registration so that I'm not stuck with one or the other, right? It's kind of a package deal in order to get to London and then to play in the event itself. Now, there are some people that still also had to deal with travel awards and stipends and that kind of information, but I think since that was pushed out so late by the company, those guys were actually, and gals were all accommodated, right? They made special
travel awards, not the stipends.
Just the travel awards.
Just the travel awards, not the stipends.
So the stipend part that's a whole nother ball of wax, but
right.
Yeah, but I guess let me kind of dial back my sarcasm. I didn't want to come across as like overly critical of people that have waited and got hosed, because that is a horrible position to be in. I totally understand, right? So if you ended up buying tickets and you couldn't get in, it sucks. I will 100% admit. I'm just going to point out, though, that moving forward throughout the season and future seasons, probably, caps are going to be a thing. And unfortunately, you're going to have to try to secure that spot as soon as you can. There's no waiting. And I'll admit, I've always been a procrastinator for, my two boys end up playing a lot of times. And there have been times, I think, the week of Hartford, I think I bought their registration, I think Wednesday before we went over to Hartford. But it really hasn't been a thing in the past. But when the EUIC, we still had people running into a cap issue. Jimmy Ballard even put out on his event page, here are my numbers. Here are my caps for TCG and VGC.
Well, I think with the Peros programming now, with Arcanine Labs having that live roster, that's a little bit more transparent for a lot of the regionals where,
True.
the live roster is there, everybody knows where to access it, or people know to spread that, to at least check the numbers. I was like kind of compulsively posting that every day for Hartford to try and hit the one kicker that we needed to get for, top 16 cut. So for regionals, at least you kind of have that transparency. On the flip side, with the TPCI run tournaments, sometimes that doesn't exist, and so we
Right.
get that if they advertise a number. I still haven't seen whether or not that was the case. If that 750 or that 700 number that people have been floating around, I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that existed,
I saw like
or if
one
it was last
screenshot.
year.
I saw one screenshot and it was kind of a cropped out thing, and then I've never seen anything else since then. But yeah, so I don't want to get a whole bunch of angry social media. Yeah,
I'm used to those.
Yeah. Send everything to Liberty Garden.
I hate you.
But I like I said, my whole point was just to say, look, caps are a thing. Get your registrations in early, people. You're gonna run into problems more so moving forward. I think caps are going to become even a bigger issue as the popularity grows. New format coming up, which is in our desserts. But before we bogart all the time and go into desserts, what I really wanted to do is kind of talk to Armand. Puff, puff, give, man. I wanted to pass it over to Armand so that he can kind of talk us a little bit briefly about the check-in and how many players actually were affected over in the EUIC and what happened.
Well, the unfortunate thing is I don't have a satisfying answer to that.
Oh, sorry.
You guys know probably more than I do in regards to this.
Oh.
I know there was a cap advertised. I know a cap was reached early. I've also seen the same tweets with the crop top 750. What I do know is that there were threats made against certain TPCI employees relating to this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate.
Wow. Wow.
I know that certain players went over anyway, trying to get in, using different methods, all of which failed. Like you said, if you know you're going to an event, buy the registration ticket as soon as possible because caps will be reached. We didn't add anybody late into the event that wasn't registered. Like Jen said, the people with travel awards, I think it was them.
Right.
There were slots available to them to register if they wanted to register.
Mm-hmm.
But there were obviously some slots open because not all of the travel awards players wanted to register.
Mm.
And I know that travel stipends people that if they showed up and they actually purchased what do you call it? It's not
the spectator badge.
It's a spectator badge that they would still then get their stipends. So
right.
it's not
right. They couldn't play, but they got their stipend.
Exactly.
That's kind of a compromise. Yeah. At least they're not out the money, right?
It's not the best compromise, but it was something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you happen to know like how many players were there trying to get in at the last minute, approximately?
I know of about 3, to be honest. But this is also from social media. At the event itself, none of those ever came anywhere near the actual event or the VG side of it.
Oh, okay.
So so officially I don't know about them, but via social media I know about 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the count that I saw that was like the count was like 20, but I think people that actually showed up to the event, it's probably more like the number that Armand has said, and it's like 3.
I know there was a bunch. I know there was a bunch more than that that when the cap was reached before people had to start traveling, there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh my God, I was trying to register and I can't."
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think
Yeah.
that number was more like 20 something.
Yeah.
But the people that actually traveled, that tried to go still because they had already booked or whatever, was more, along the
Yeah.
lines of like 3 or 4.
Like I said, that is completely unfortunate. And I'm not trying to say that's completely their fault, and I'm not trying to say that I'm gonna make light of their situation, because I know I wouldn't want to throw down that much money and travel halfway around the world, and not be able to play in the event. That's, but yeah, like we're all trying to say here is registration opens, get your foot in the door, secure your spot.
I mean,
Yeah.
like we saw at San Francisco Worlds a couple years ago, where the space was an issue. Like, these things are gonna come up, and granted, we all expect TPCI to hold themselves to a higher standard, because that's just what we feel is our due. But things happen, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the company is entirely blameless on this, but you know you want to play in this tournament, you got to make sure that you do your due diligence and register. If you go to register 5 minutes before or like a week after the registration link goes, and it's still a month out, and you've already reached the cap, then there may be an issue. But I think that the company does its best to kind of try and figure out how many players are going to show up to an event. And I think probably, now this is just me speculating, but I think probably the abysmal attendance that we've been seeing from the video game community thus far over, the past tail end of the season, even before Worlds,
Right.
kind of made them take a step back and say, well, do we even need to have all of this, all of these numbers for VG? If regionals are barely hitting 100, why should we assume that we're going to hit this? And I know people are going to point to last year's EUIC and say, well, there was a lot more people there last year. Well, there was a lot of other factors involved, and some of that was brand new format, totally kind of like anybody's game Wild West situation, where we hadn't had a huge tournament with that game yet, and people were like, well, I can come out of left field with something and snowball my way into into a world invite and travel stipends and things like that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of other factors that go into figuring out attendance. And so you guys waiting until the last minute, now this isn't just for the EUIC, but like regionals and mid-season stuff like that, you waiting until the last minute to register really hurts the organizers in their planning process too. Like, organizers have to submit floor plans to venues weeks in advance, and have because a lot of times they have to deal with unions and things like that for setup, and so down to the chair placement we're talking about for these floor plans.
Yeah.
So with this community, VG is kind of known for waiting until the last minute to register, but it really doesn't help your cause at all. If you want to be taken seriously, if you want to get the seats at tournaments, and you don't want them to be farmed out to TCG because TCG's registration is ballooning, you got to register early so that the organizers can say, all right, well, I have 400 players registered, a month in advance, or 3 weeks in advance. I know what my table needs to look like, or what my floor plan needs to look like, and I'm good, I'm set to go.
Yeah.
Whereas, we're a week out from a lot of the tournaments, and there's 70 people registered for VG, and the organizer's like, well, why am I even bothering at this point,
Yeah. And adding those tables and chairs and restructuring the floor plans, at the last minute sometimes costs the organizers more money, right? So it's not just I have more floor space, I'm going to bring out 5 more tables. Bringing out 5 more tables might cost another $2,000. Who knows? Because I can't just go in the back and grab a table and throw it out there, because the union rules and the venue, everything's contracted out. So I want a table, an 8-foot table. They got to pay Bubba to go out there and grab the table, bring it out there, put it down. So that 8-foot table probably cost, $200 a day to rent. And then Bubba, got 2 hours of overtime because it's the weekend, to bring out this table. And there's a lot of factors. And so Bottom line,
renting the equipment is another thing that players don't think about. They assume that these venues come with all of these tables and chairs. Well, that's not always the case. A lot of times the venues outsource their tables and chairs for their events, and so an organizer has to submit their event proposal with the floor plan and the amount of tables and chairs they need, and then the venue goes and secures those. And now if you're talking like a week out or a couple of days out, where your registration is now kind of exponentially growing because everybody's coming out of the woodwork to register, the organizer's now like, where am I coming up with these tables and chairs? Because now it's going to be double or triple the price, because that's the venue's fee. You guys really don't think about these things when you're standing on the outside, what goes into planning these events, and it's kind of like, wait until the last minute at your own risk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, if I could answer that.
Go ahead.
In specifically, if you think about the EUIC now, there were players that couldn't register, and they decided to show up anyway, trying to get in. Now, yes, there were physical spots available in terms of there were 5 or 6 or however many seats that weren't necessarily occupied from the start. But that also, if you announce that those players will not be allowed to register, and then on the day allow them to participate because they had not shown up, this is a precedent. How many people will then not just show up at your door? Maybe hundreds to say, listen, there's 5 slots. I want one of those 5. What do you do as an organizer do? That creates chaos. And it's not something that anybody's really equipped to. I mean, I'm saying TPCI or Tournament Center, in theory, could have done something. But it sets a very bad precedent for future events, for everybody around the world, not just in Europe. And I think players need to know that. But like you said, do not wait until last minute.
I think it all boils down to that is just don't wait. Please don't wait.
The camera just zoomed in on Mike's face right when you started saying that.
Don't wait. So that kind of segues into our dessert segment here, unless you guys have anything else you want to bring up for EUIC.
No, I think we covered everything. I know there was some judge rulings and things like that people were talking about, but we kind of make it policy to not really talk about penalties that are applied or things like that. So
unless they apply to kind of a broader topic discussion.
Right.
Yeah,
so we don't really.
I don't want to address them specifically. Yeah.
Right. So unless somebody had asked a question generally that kind of touched on it, I was gonna allow it, but nobody's really brought it up, so we'll just skip on down to dessert.
So in our desserts, we got some 3 main topics. San Jose Regionals coming up this weekend, right?
Yep, that's this weekend.
Couple days.
And Patricia had some really awesome trophies made for the mid-season that they're running. Those were beautiful.
They have some awesome coins like they did in Florida, but these ones are looking really nice too.
GX counters.
Yes, absolutely. And I think these ones are numbered too. I saw, at least the ones I saw. Lots of good stuff. You got the Dark Side Queens running the show down there in San Jose this weekend, so you're gonna have the same stellar cast of crew over there in San Jose. So if you haven't registered and there's still slots, go ahead, sign up, get over there if you can. I know I'd love to be there, but it's a long ways away. Sad face.
Thanksgiving weekend, flying to California, $700.
So that's San Jose's coming up. Looking for another set of stellar activities going on there, and we'll probably see a lot of the same top-end players probably going to be snowballing their way through regionals coming off this EUIC. We'll see what's going on.
I think the what's it called, the world CP leader, Alberto Lara, that's his backyard. So
he'll be all
backyard
there.
Kind of California area, so he should definitely be there. There's a lot of high caliber players over on the West Coast, so they should all be in San Jose. I have absolutely no idea if anybody's streaming San Jose. I've kind of been off Twitter for a couple weeks now, so I haven't seen anything.
A good question.
So
I don't know.
I'm not sure what the situation is
I don't know if
there.
anybody in the chat knows or not.
I know last year Patricia, when she ran, was it San Jose that ran last year or whatever it was? I know Patricia had mentioned something about when she was looking into grassroots streaming. The venue wanted like $2,000 or $3,000 for internet alone.
I think that was Arizona.
Was that Arizona? It was just like kind
Yeah.
of ridiculous. Right. Gabby's reminding me that San Jose had the official stream.
Yeah.
But there may or may not be a stream depending on if the cost could be met to get the internet. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see.
Absolutely.
And then next up is Memphis.
Memphis. This will be the last regional of the 2017 Video Game Championship Series. So if you like this meta and this game and this format, that's your last opportunity to snowball a regional. So come on down to Memphis. Come on down. Well, everything's down for me because I live in Northeast Indiana. So, well, not everything. Madison's up.
Canada's up. New York
Canada.
is up.
Oh yeah, Canada's up. No, New York's over. Come on,
Maine
get
is
your
up.
geography right. So, but yeah, Memphis.
Great Lakes are up.
I'll be at Memphis.
Are you
for
really
that.
going to Memphis?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know. I'm so jealous.
jelly.
Whatever. Don't say jelly. I hate that.
I'm old. But the Memphis numbers are actually. I'll tell you what. One of the things that unfortunate side effect, but it's good for Memphis of the whole EUIC cap is people kind of were like, oh crap, and the Memphis numbers actually took a kind of small spike there immediately following because like I said, Jimmy published the heck out of his own player number caps, and he said, these are my caps. Here's the registration links. Don't wait. And I'll tell you what, that day, this guy right here registered both of my boys. So
Do you want to take Ian and register?
hey, register them, put them on an airplane, I'll pick them up.
There you go.
So yeah, it's
Put him on the mega bus.
So Memphis is coming up. That's going to be the last one of the format in the season. Format for the season.
Yes.
And then January 1, we kick off with a new format change. Woo, woo. Yep. And format change is going to be going to.
Why are you still on that battle? You are awful at this game.
Because I've been
Stop
doing the
it.
stew. Okay, so I close it and I put it over here. And then I just pop it up to rub it in your face that I already have my Decidui.
I'm going to soft reset for a shiny Decidui, so.
Just breed for one afterwards. It's way easier.
Oh.
I'm going to soft reset the heck out of my game for a shiny. Oh, it's probably not going to be shiny, but a Stakataka.
Oh, we don't even know if they're shiny locked yet, do we?
They're not
I have
shiny.
no idea.
Dang it.
Do you say they're not or they are?
They are not.
Ooh, I could get a shiny Stakataka! Yes!
I tell you what, I'm going to get a Stakataka and I'm going to get a Rattata. And that'll give me my lead every time.
We've created a monster.
Go Rattata and Stakataka.
Monster.
And I'm gonna restart my game. I'm gonna name my trainer Pringles.
We didn't touch on one topic that I was actually messaged about. So I know that we'll cover it another time, but I just wanted to acknowledge the topic. Basically, we were asked, what can players do to help judges and organizers at events? So it's something that I've talked about extensively. I actually covered it in my AMA a couple of years ago, right after Boston Worlds. It's on Stunfist/Stunfist if you want to look up the AMA. The answer is in there, but there's a lot of things that you can do. We can definitely cover that. Probably we can do that before the next format change, so that we can kind of kick off the new format the right way, I guess. And that'll be a nice thing for people to kind of talk about, or know that there's things that they can do to help an event run better. But yeah, I think are you messaging me, Stakataka?
That's so funny.
God damn it. You're literally the worst. That is it. You're getting coal in your stocking. And yes, Kyle, a couple of years ago I did an AMA. Stop it. Yes, Nikki is reminding me. June Nikki are next week. We didn't put that in our dessert. You guys are in for a treat. June Nikki are next week. Our leads, our queens of VGC. They will be here. They'll be coming off San Jose. Nikki's going to be coming off London and San Jose.
Yes, she's really exhausted.
Would you... Anyway, they're gonna kind of what I'm really interested in, the thing that I'm excited most about having June Nikki on, besides the fact that I get to talk to them, and I love doing that, just kind of giving us a history lesson of the origins of competitive VGC and what it was like when it first started and when they first came on board and all that stuff. So if you guys are students of VGC history, or if you know somebody that's interested in where we started and all that kind of jazz, or if you're just curious to meet, you're not old, Nikki, stop it. Curious to meet the queens of VGC, June Nikki, our glorious leaders of the dark side, please tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. No Stack Attacka.
So sad.
Armand, is there anything that you want to say to wrap up?
Thank you for having me. I want to say thanks to TPCI for having me as a head judge. I was surprised when they first invited me, because obviously my event history is not as vast as most other people. But they believed in me, you guys believed in me, and we pulled off a great one. So that's what I've got to say.
Awesome. Alrighty, Mike.
Stack Attacka.
That's it. I quit.
No, that's basically.
I don't have my
super
substitute plush, but I got. There you go.
I'm super stoked to kind of keep track of what's happening with San Jose, and I'm super excited to have June and Nikki on next week with us, talk about some things. It's always great to talk to my mothers, if you will,
Mama,
like mama from another family. So I really appreciate everything. Thank you very much, Armand, for joining us such early in the morning, sharing some insights from this last event. Looking forward to it. And as always, if anybody has any topics, questions, issues, whatever's, feel free to message us. We'll try our best to not get sidetracked by crazy Stack Attackas.
I'm naming my Stack Attacka Krakatoa.
Krakatoa.
Yeah, isn't that a volcano, Krakatoa?
Yeah, I see. When I hear Krakatoa, I think of SpongeBob when Squidward was like that superhero. It was Krakatoa. Sorry, I digress. But anyways, that's all I have to say. Is just thanks again for everybody for our 10th episode.
10th episode. We were really silly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Armand, for coming on. Enjoy the rest of your time in London.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Nikki, we need sleep. I'm gonna go and have a snack attacka.
Oh my dear. Oh, no.
Sorry. Oh my God.
All right,
on that note.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Catch you
Have
next
a happy
week.
Thanksgiving, everybody. Go get a snack attacka before you go to bed. And
Catch you next week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.